Hey, I'm Sarah Hurwitz-Robey from Colonial Jewelers, and this is the Heart of Frederick podcast. And we're talking to all kinds of people that make downtown Frederick great. So this is Greg Brown of Monocacy. Tell me the name of the company.
So technically, president of the Monocacy Hospitality. That entity owns and operates Brewer's Alley and also Bentztown.
Okay.
And then I also am involved in a different entity called Monocacy Brewing Company.
Okay.
Which isn't necessarily, it's in the city of Frederick, but not in the downtown perimeters. But that brewery, we have one brewer who contract brews the Brewer's Alley beer and also the Monocacy brand beer coming out of that brewery. Actually, it's the largest production brewery in Frederick and also the largest beer garden.
Cool. Yeah, it's a great space out there. I've been there for music, and it's just nice and big outside. I consider that almost downtown. You can bike there from downtown.
Yep, that's kind of a passion project. It's one of those things that's been around since 2012 or so, and we're just continuing to invest in the brewery with the goal over the next 10 years. We really want to have a state-of-the-art, best-in-class brewery right in the city of Frederick, but also in the state of Maryland.
That's awesome. So it started that you were brewing beer before you at Brewer's Alley, right? And then they moved it to Monocacy.
Yep.
Started supplying it.
Yep. And that was actually the cool. It's kind of an interesting story, but as Frederick Brewing Company, when that became Flying Dog, they actually contract brewed a lot of the surplus beer that Brewer's Alley, the 7-barrel system at Brewer's Alley, just couldn't keep up with the demand for beer. Huh. And so as Flying Dog was scaling and growing, they ran out of capacity, and they were unable to brew the additional Brewer's Alley beer that Brewer's Alley required to crank. And so as a result, Phil Bowers, who I think many people probably know, I think one of the key figures that really helped to revitalize and bring downtown Frederick to what it is today.
I agree.
He had to make a decision. And as I always say, our businesses are based on beer. And he had a real passion for beer, which is really what created Brewer's Alley. And so he had a decision to make. It was either find someone else to contract Brewer's beer or create the Monocacy Brewing brand. And that's what he chose to do. And so in that, obviously, he purchased the 1781 Market Street building, which was in 1930 or 33. It was the most innovative ice cream plant,
really,
I believe, in the U.S.
Wow.
And I always keep this fresh in mind when you talk about innovation and the continuous eye for growth and opportunities and always being able to pivot. But by 1975, it was bankrupt. So, if you kind of look at that, that's basically a little over a 40-year run from most innovative to bankrupt, which is kind of an interesting story.
Right. Oh, you always got to keep on your toes, especially coming from legacy businesses. It's something that you always have to think about. I agree. So what's your background in the restaurant industry?
So I've had, I've opened and or owned 9 restaurants at this point in my career. I tell this to everyone. I never, I wasn't destined to be in the restaurant business. I kind of fell into it, and then I found that I really had a passion for it, and the passion really revolves around as you get older and you see what's going on around you. The passion really revolves around first and foremost the team. Yeah. And so that's one thing that really attracted me when I got into it. And then obviously being involved and really having an impact on the community. Those are really the two major things that I like. And obviously the guests are key part of that equation also, but the guests, the community, employees, they kind of all, in my mind, connect together. If we're doing a great job as a company, our employees are happy. We know we're going to make mistakes. I don't think any business owner can look anyone in the eye and say that they haven't made mistakes, but I always tell a team it's how we learn from and how we move forward from those mistakes. But going back to how I got into the restaurant business, I'm an accountant, an auditor by trade, so a degree in accounting, a minor in economics. I always say I got an MBA along the way. But I worked for, I was an auditor, an internal auditor for several companies. One of those companies was Anheuser-Busch in St. Louis, Missouri. And so I ended up buying a small 3-family townhome in Soulard, which is a historic area of St. Louis, literally in the shadows of the Anheuser-Busch brewery. There was a small restaurant and bar down there. I think I was 23 or 24 years old. I was an auditor at Anheuser-Busch, traveling a lot, and I walked to work a lot when I was in town. Most of the time I was in an airplane or in a hotel, based on the scope of the work that I did for Anheuser-Busch. But when I was in town, I always loved this restaurant and bar. The owner that had it was a young person like me. And as I think anyone can tell you, it's easy to get absorbed in the business. And he did that. I say that, unfortunately, I think he snorted away all his profits.
Also common.
So I since it was right by my house, I knew the bartenders well. I knew the whole team well, and I've always been a dreamer. As I look back in my life, I've always, in some capacity, owned businesses. I think I had like 30 lawns that I mowed when I was in junior high and high school up to that point. But I've always really been enthralled by business, and I think that the competition in business, the pivoting in business, always brings the best out of you. So I had an opportunity. The bartenders, and everyone was going to lose their job because the restaurant and bar had fallen on hard times. The neighbors wanted it closed down. The alder people wanted it closed down. No one wanted to go. But I decided, looking back at it, knowing what I know now, I did it with no accountants, no lawyers. I did a deal through the gentleman's father, who had to step in. He was a retired firefighter, had to step in and run it for his son. Yeah. And we were able to get a deal done. And so it was one of those deals where I think I finalized the financing at like 2 a.m. On Friday, and we closed the deal at 9 a.m. on the same day, Friday. Wow. And then I chose to resign from Anheuser-Busch on Saturday. So, you have, there's a lot going on. I think, again, 23, 24. And my parents suggested I see a psychologist. I thought I was crazy. Because in St. Louis, if you're working at Anheuser-Busch at that time, that was before InBev acquired the Anheuser-Busch business that was built in America. And that was the place. That was the place to work. Once you got there, you didn't leave. And I chose to leave because I felt like my passions were elsewhere. We had a little bit of luck. My Anheuser-Busch team definitely helped me out, but we were able to turn the restaurant and bar around there in St. Louis in about 3 months.
Wow.
Was able to pay down all the debt on the restaurant and bar in about 6 months. 3 or 4 months in, we were running well. I was having way too much fun as a 23 or 24-year-old
owning a bar
in Soulard.
Yes, yeah.
And so a friend of mine at Nestle offered, he said, hey, we're looking for an audit supervisor in Nestle, which Nestle Purina was right down the road from Anheuser-Busch. And so I kind of looked around. I looked at where I was at that point. It's funny, people, it's interesting to see where you come from, but I'll never forget, the Friday that we had all of our orders in and we had the deal done. I literally had $50 in my personal account and I had $50 in my business account. And fortunately we had a good weekend. So it was, we were down, I was down to that level. I had everything, I had leverage and liens on everything. And I basically had a loan shark in the background that gave me the other part of it. But yeah, we got a deal done. And the strategy with that was always, I was really interested in the real estate in St. Louis. And so over time, I think in 2012, we were able to acquire the buildings that the restaurant in. I renovated those buildings. And now they're phenomenal residential apartment complexes in St. Louis. The bar continues. I sold my interest in the bar in 2018, but it's still Dee's Place. That's what it's called. And the guys running it are friends of mine, and they acquired the business from me, and they're running the business a lot better than I ever did. I'll put it that way. That's awesome,
though, for you to see it, take the full circle.
So fast forward, did the auditing in St. Louis. Was involved with a disastrous audit at an ice cream plant in Fort Wayne, Indiana. It was the Edie's ice cream plant. It was one of those deals where the controller resigned a week before the audit, and the plant manager was moved to another plant about 3 days before the audit. But the plant manager they brought in, she was phenomenal. She really taught me. She was the one that really helped me become more than just someone that understood numbers and accountant. So after the audit was over, it was not a good audit, but she, for whatever reason, she thought she'd give me an opportunity. So she walked into the office I was in, and at the end of the audit, she's like, I want you to be our controller. I said, okay. I think I was, 27, 28, didn't know much about being a controller. She's like, don't worry about the controller stuff. I'll teach that to you, but I want you to be the controller. I was like, okay. So I left St. Louis, and I moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and we had a phenomenal turnaround. We turned around the ice cream plant. We went from like the worst plant in Nestle USA to the best plant in a couple-year run. And I learned so much about manufacturing. I just lived at the plant. I went, I learned the line, I learned how to work the lines. I made ice cream. I learned all the processes and procedures in the warehouse. And that was what she wanted me to do. She's like, I don't need anyone to just put numbers in front of me. I need you to understand the numbers. And so I took that, I ran with it. Had a good run there. I'm still getting to the restaurants.
Yeah, this is all food related. So
I was promoted. So brings me to Maryland temporarily. Okay. Had a good run. So a couple years in at Fort Wayne, Indiana. The largest it was at that time. I'm not sure if it still is, but there's a Nestle ice cream plant in Laurel, Maryland. That's been acquired by private equity at this point because Nestle sold a lot of their ice cream business. But that was the largest ice cream plant in the nation. And they promoted me to the controller of that plant, or largest ice cream plant in the world at the time. They promoted me to that plant. They had a lot of similar issues that they had at the Fort Wayne ice cream plant. Kind of the same playbook there, went there, ended up, unfortunately our plant manager was fired through the process of me being there. Great guy. He just didn't necessarily, I don't think he fit what the Nestle culture was, what they wanted. And so I became the plant manager for a period of time. And we were able to turn that plant around, had a good time doing it. In that process, I met my wife, who was a Frederick, I call her a Frederick girl.
Okay.
And so actually I was living in DC. I moved to Frederick. And so we were here for a year and a half when we met. And actually, I think our second date was at Brewer's Alley. And this was before we had kids. We spent a lot of time downtown when I wasn't working at the ice cream plant. And we really had, we loved Frederick. We had a great time. And it's funny because I was always just intrigued by Brewer's Alley, obviously close to, the way it stands, the way it looks. If you ever go to St. Louis, a little different scale, but you see how the Anheuser-Busch Brewery stands out. It's kind of like a beacon in downtown St. Louis. And Brewer's Alley was always like, wow, this is huge. I didn't know, again, I would never have envisioned in 2011 that I was going to someday buy Brewer's Alley.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what we did. And then I got antsy in the world of Nestle. I always wanted to have a family. And I met Ann Gamble was her maiden name, but Ann Brandau, and she was pretty good girl, I thought. And luckily she thought I was, decent. I kept trying to keep expectations low. So we were having a great time. And then a friend of mine from St. Louis called me and he said, hey, this small company called Treehouse Foods, it's like a $1.52 billion company in private label business. They have a dressings division, and through acquisition and integration, they've grown way too fast. And the president of the division needs a little bit of help getting things under control. And so basically they created a special role. And I think I was over, 6 or 7 plants for manufacturing, but I basically became the president's co-pilot.
This is back in St. Louis?
No, this is in Maryland. So okay. I'm getting antsy. I know with Nestle, I got to be an expat. I got to go overseas. And so I didn't really want to go that way from a personal standpoint. And that was in order to really continue climbing,
grow there,
to the executive or officer levels of Nestle, which actually, it makes sense because of how large the company is. So I jumped ship. I went to Treehouse Foods, and we had a great run, had a 5-year run. And the president of the division, great guy, he created private label salad dressing in the 90s, sold out, was a private equity, and eventually found his way back to Treehouse Foods and learned a ton. He was the entrepreneur, right? Shoot from the hip entrepreneur. And really my job was to work with him and really drive home the numbers and organize and get everything really running, right? I would say he made it rain and I had to kind of angle the raindrops. They fell where we wanted them to. But it was a good run. We did that for 5 years. We went from like a $500 or $600 million division to $1.5 billion through, correcting some things and then additional integration and acquisition. So while we were doing this, he was a huge foodie. And so he created another restaurant in a small town called Northeast, Pennsylvania. And he knew that I was still involved with restaurants. So, we kind of worked together on that. It was more of a hobby for him at that time. And then when he turned 50, he decided he was done with the corporate thing. And he approached me in 2017, and he always called me Brownie. He said, Brownie, he said, you want to keep doing this corporate thing, or do you want to jump off the entrepreneurial cliff for a while? And I said, let's jump.
This holiday, give a gift that tells your story forever, because your story is our legacy. The Colonial Jewelers box. There's just more in it.
Cosmec Healing handcrafted small batch tinctures and transdermal salves, double third-party tested for quality you can trust. If you've got pain, headaches, or anxiety, our products are here to help you find relief. Patient over profits mindset, 'cause we're patients too. CosmecHealing.com.
So what we did is, we put up like 6 restaurants in, 14 months. We got over our skis. I learned a lot of what I didn't know about the business. But we pushed through, I said, kind of learned through the school of hard knocks, on those. And so, had 6 restaurants in 14 months, grinding through, learning. And, as that transpired, that's where I really kind of started enjoying the restaurant business. I enjoyed being an entrepreneur. And then we also acquired a commercial food service equipment company 2 weeks before COVID. COVID hit. Before my wife and I got married, and we had 3 kids when we were in Erie for about 10 years, she always said she'd like to get back to Maryland. So once we got through COVID in early 2021, she was like, hey, just want to know what you're going to do. Because she said, you guys are always buying stuff, and that's cool. But, if we've got 3 kids, we don't really have any family in the Erie, Pennsylvania area, which is where I moved with Treehouse Foods. And she's like, when you get back to Maryland? I was like, well, we're through COVID. So, all right, let's figure it out. So sometimes I'm a little slow. My wife will continue to tell that day in and day out, but I connect the dots on that one. So we made the decision from a family standpoint, where I think if you look at your values, family always comes first. And we made a decision to go back to Maryland. I obviously had to find something to do. Thought about going back to Nestle, but once you become an entrepreneur, I was a bull in a china shop before I left corporate world, and I would have been that much worse if I got back into the corporate world. So what we did is, we came down here, and I was looking for things to do. I was looking actually for some smaller restaurants. I wasn't aware the Brewer's Alley was available, but our real estate agent knew a commercial realtor who happened to be Phil Bauer's nephew. We're looking at properties, not seeing anything that really excited us. And he's like, hey, I think my uncle might be looking to sell. And I'm like, what's the restaurant? Brewer's Alley. And I'm like, oh, interesting. So, that the conversations went on for a long time. I feel very, I just say I'm humbled and honored for the opportunity to take the baton of such a, an iconic, I think, brand, and also brand, along with Colonial Jewelers. I mean, I think if you look back in '96, what downtown Frederick was, it really built. I mean, it was one of the key contributors to building what downtown Frederick is today. And not only downtown Frederick, the impacts that it's had on the city of Frederick, Frederick County, the state of Maryland. I mean, we're one of the oldest brew pubs in the state of Maryland that are still around. Obviously, Phil behind the scenes, he really was a key driver in creating what craft beer is in Maryland today. And so totally honored to take that on. And it was, lots of conversations. Phil wanted to make sure that legacy continued. I think Phil could have sold to a lot of people. But he didn't want the Brewer's Alley name to be tarnished. And so I think some of the most important things of the deal for him was that he could find someone that he could trust and count on to continue to build and grow the brand within the realm of what his values were. And he found that in me. And so it was as simple as, I say Phil was looking for a succession plan. I was looking for a job. Phil is still an owner of the new entity. I told Phil, I was like, I'm not going to buy the business unless you stay around the hoop in a minority capacity, because you can't replace that kind of experience and that kind of knowledge. I'm on the phone with Phil at least 2 or 3 times a week.
Does he come in anymore?
Yeah, he's in. He spends a lot of time in Florida these days, but he's in and out of town. I always joke it's like the life of Phil. It's be a full-time job trying to figure out his schedule. But,
yeah, I see him. Around. He's growing his hair long. He's like living the dream. I love it.
And what of all the people that I've worked with in life and business, Phil has got to be the straightest shooter. I mean, he's just a straight shooter, and he has a unique way to look at how to resolve problems and how to work with people and build relationships. And I try to learn, from him every day. He's just
feels great.
He's a great guy. So long story short, in the restaurants, we got the deal done in the summer of 22. We intentionally kept it quiet because we didn't want people to be freaking out about, oh my gosh, Brewer's Alley's changed hands. What's going to happen to it? So we kept it quiet. In parallel to that, Phil brought an opportunity up on 6 South Bench Street, which was the Bench Street Raw Bar. That time there was a struggling restaurant over there, and we kind of looked at it, and we put a plan together. We acquired the real estate over there, and we created the concept Bentztown. And my wife actually came up with the name Bentztown. She was looking through some history books because we were like, what are we going to call this restaurant? What's the concept going to be? And the idea was, if you've ever experienced, Lower Broadway in Nashville, it's truly an experience. I always say it's an experience when you're there and the next morning, reality sets in. You're like, oh boy, that was a fun day. But we got to push forward. And so we kind of wanted to create something unique, something that the city of Frederick and downtown didn't have. And that's what we created Bentztown. And so that we did that, and we opened in May of 2024. The business is doing, we're really happy with the business. Bentztown was what the area was known as 150 years ago.
Patrick.
Yeah. And so if you look at it, we're hoping that people will see what's going on down there. Scott McCaskill he's done some nice things with the real estate down there, but I think that's an area of Frederick that I think is ripe for, a bit of a revitalization or a renaissance. I mean, I think that's already in process down there. And so, a very, playbook for any great restaurant is, you put a great restaurant in, and that can help build up the area. And so that's kind of what we're doing over there. And it's really a unique concept, right? I mean, the food is phenomenal. The beverage program is phenomenal. We know we're not on Market Street. And I also, Brewer's Alley is the same way. I always try to really drive hard on our pricing. I want people to be able to come enjoy an experience with us. But I don't want to, I'm not asking them to take a loan out of the bank to go do it.
Right.
And so we try to keep our pricing, really lean. I think quite frankly, we have to have one of the best, if not the best, happy hours every day of the week
at Bentztown.
At Bentztown with a variety of things. I think that's things people don't know. We have a captain's list, very, very challenging and difficult to find high-end, whiskeys and bourbons that people enjoy. And so that's kind of the concept. That's the newest concept that we have. It's doing well. I think we've got a lot more growth opportunity. The beauty. I got fired basically probably a month into the job when I did the floor, and my wife was not impressed with my efforts.
I heard you. You told me. Do you mind shutting that door since it's
so she took over. She said, "You're done."
You told me Anne was gonna, when you said that, when we were talking about it initially, you said she's doing all the design, and it really.
She said, "You're done. I'm designing it. You're just gonna follow my lead." And I said, "Got it. No problem." So she's really responsible for the entire design. That was really, that was a grassroots effort. That was working as a team. With what I call the Monocacy hospitality team, as well as Anne. I think she has a good eye for design, and so that's how we kind of created that. But it was a team effort. It wasn't just we're doing this. It was a team effort with the idea of creating something special and unique for the the So
you have a line dancing there.
You got Wednesday is line dancing. We got Thursday is bluegrass, which it's really cool to watch the bluegrass guys when they come in town.
Up on the stage?
Yeah, to play. They have their own little thing going on. Friday, Saturday, we always try to lean in to have live music. And so you literally go in there, you can have an immersive experience, a great dinner, great cocktails, great beer. Could be biased on the beer.
Do you serve Monocacy Brewing beer?
Yeah, Monocacy. You got Monocacy beer there, Brewers Alley. We also have there's other beer there too.
Okay.
It's not just a Monocacy and Brewers Alley house, but we try to, let other craft beers in. Some of the larger, the Coors Banquet beer is there because people enjoy it and it has a good fit with line dancing, and we really like our sales rep with premium. So, so we work with Ted a lot. But yeah, it's really become it's a phenomenal concept. And then obviously Monocacy Brewing in the background, we've been putting a lot of resources and focus into that and really trying to grow that. And I'm really proud of the team. I think this year is the first year in a long time that we might get that one in the black. And so that's always that's a big win. And then the beer business right now, I think Frederick's seeing it, the state of Maryland has been seeing it. The nation's been seeing it, right? You just got breweries shuttering right and left, and so it's a bit of a tough time for a lot of breweries, and feel for those folks. But
is that because of more competition, or people aren't?
Well, I mean, I think you can look at it, right? For whatever reason. I mean, maybe the young folks, maybe they're more mature than I am, but I think that the alcohol consumption continues to decline
I've heard
a little bit. There's ebbs and flows. Beer is down, but I always, one thing I love about beer, I mean, beer is the alcohol choice of moderation. And if you make the decision to get more and more into craft beer, you really have appreciation for all the different styles that are out there, and you really have appreciation for people that put the right emphasis on quality and process and procedures in how they're going about the brewing process. And I'm very, very proud of the team that we have that brews Brewers Alley beer and the Monocacy Brewing beer, because we do that. I mean, we have a quality lab at the brewery. We have very specific procedures that our quality manager goes through day in and day out to make sure that at the end of the day, I'll use, everyone uses McDonald's as the example, but I'll use them as an example, right? I mean, if you get a McDonald's cheeseburger in Frederick, Maryland, if you get one in St. Louis, Missouri, if you get one in China, it's going to taste like a McDonald's cheeseburger. So whether you like them or you don't like them, you know what to expect. And so the styles of our beer, I mean, Brewers Alley Kolsch, right? I think we've sold over 11 million Brewers Alley Kolsch.
That's the iconic to me.
Over 30 years.
The Brewers beer that everyone.
Yeah. And it's brewed the same way, and it has the same consistency, and people have the same enjoyment for it. And that's not just Brewers Alley Kolsch, but that goes with all of our beers. But to be able to maintain that consistency over a long period of time, that's critical. I mean, it's really easy to brew a different type of beer all the time, because you may not be intending to do that. That might just be the result of it, because you're not following the process. And we brew plenty of different beers, but there's a process that we follow. So we know if this is the style we're doing, this is the typical if this is the New England IPA we're doing, we know how it's going to come out, because we follow the process. So
what's your favorite Monocacy beer? My favorite,
oh boy, that's a tough one. I will say this won't be very exciting, but we just released, it's called Monocacy Ultimate. And we got with our brewer, and we're like, hey, Michael, we want you to engineer a beer that can compete with people who really, really enjoy Miller Lite and Mick Ultra. Like, brew us a light beer, low calorie, low carb. He did that. And it's really taken off. And, it's like a dagger in my side when, late night at Brewers Alley, I'm walking through and people are drinking Miller Lite. They were drinking Mick Ultra. So I was like, let's do this, because I think this is an opportunity for us, one, to provide a phenomenal local brand for the folks that enjoy Miller Lite and Mick Ultra. By the way, I work for Anheuser-Busch, so I've had plenty of macro beers in my life. And like McDonald's, it's consistent, right? You know what you're getting. And so we brewed that beer. And so from a Monocacy standpoint, we do a lot of cool stuff at Monocacy. But, right now, I think that's probably the one that I'm most excited about, because it's a recent launch. And we've just had so much. It's been very successful. Brewers Alley, right? I mean, when you walk through late night, you see a lot of Monocacy Ultimate cans traveling around, which is a big win, in my opinion. And we're seeing that in the market too. People that taste that beer are like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. So that's a huge win. And obviously, I use the Bud Light, Budweiser thing, right? The Brewers Alley Kolsch, heavy, more flavor, more robust. It's kind of like we got the Monocacy Ultimate for the light beer drinker, and then the Brewers Alley Kolsch is like, hey, if you typically want a heavier beer, a Coors Banquet beer, a Budweiser, Miller High Life, something like that. Brewers Alley Kolsch is a great beer too. So
I feel like was the first you ever heard about when you went to Brewers Alley. Everyone was getting Kolsch. So
the Kolsch.
Glad to see it's still around.
It's still going. I always say 11 million people can't be wrong.
That's right. Well, last question. Where do you see the restaurant scene in downtown going?
I think the restaurant scene downtown is evolving. I think, as I started with, right, you always have to be ready to pivot. I think there's some phenomenal brands coming downtown. I'm really excited to see Salt and Vine get open down the road. I think that, the restaurant scene in downtown Frederick will continue to evolve. I think one thing that we as a city need to keep an eye on is, that we have to have a balanced portfolio of business in downtown Frederick. And I think one opportunity, which I think any restaurateur will tell you that, and probably anyone in a retail shop will tell you that in downtown Frederick, is I think, there needs to be some incentive to get professional businesses in downtown Frederick, because it's a great experience if you're down here. But professional firms, accounting firms, CPA firms, law firms, we have to find the reason to attract those folks to downtown Frederick, and I think that's a real opportunity that we need to harness over in the short term. I think that's an opportunity, but I think the restaurant scene will continue to evolve. I think that there's some real implications out there. I think folks, if you look at the disposable income, so this is the income that you have after paying taxes. That's taxes across the board, right? Property taxes, sales taxes, all the different taxes, and you look at on how much more burden the city, county, and state have decided to put on people from a tax standpoint that impacts disposable income. So I think if you were to compare back to 2019 or 2020, I think we find that people have less disposable income probably now. They might be making more, but they probably have less disposable income now because some of those, in my opinion, government policies that have been put in place have, unnecessarily created a lot of that inflation, which is taking money out of people's pockets. And so I think as you look at the restaurant scene downtown, you look at the restaurant scene in Frederick County, you look at the restaurant scene in Maryland, I think it comes back to disposable income. And I think that, our partners in government, I think they need to really take a look at, how much they have increased the tax burden on people over the course of time. I mean, obviously the elephant in the room right now is electric costs. To be transparent, I knew a year and a half ago that due to the fact that Maryland decided to walk away from coal-fired power plants, but they didn't really have a plan in place on how they were going to generate more electricity. The power plants left, and so we are importing a lot more electricity. And so to put that in perspective so people understand, the Brewer's Alley electric bill, it's actually going to be more now because they continue to find they have more and more capacity issues. Our capacity went up 900%. That's $20,000 plus a year just in electric costs at Brewer's Alley. So going back, the long-winded answer to your question, the restaurant industry will continue to evolve, but I do think people are becoming more and more price conscious. I think we're in a nice spot with that because we've always driven really, really hard on providing a phenomenal experience at a great value. So we'll continue plugging along and control the things that we can control. But it's a fun business to be in. Some people might say it'll make you old. It'll make you prematurely old. I look at it comparing to my time in the corporate world. I think it keeps me young because the energy and the excitement of the generations coming in the restaurant business and being able to partner with all of those folks and help to develop and grow them. I think I don't think you can have a bigger accomplishment in life than seeing that happen. So,
well, that's great. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for talking to me about you're a staple in downtown, both of your businesses, and so we're excited to see where downtown grows. Thank you, Greg Brown from Monocacy Hospitality Partners and Monocacy Brewery.
Thanks.